We are in, Steff. We're back in.
Hello, everyone. And the sun has been beating down on us all, hopefully across the UK and the world, if you're listening.
Yeah, oh, it's been so nice. I was just telling you, I walked to work and had a nice trek through some fields and things. But because of the sun, I was like, do you know what? I don't mind.
I don't mind getting a little bit of a top-up tan.
Yeah, and the show season as well. When you do get lean and being in prep, like you do feel it's quite nice because you can see it. It's amazing what the tan does to how you view your own physique as well. For me, with the changes happening quite a lot now, it just highlights them more. So I'm so keen to get a tan and help that as much as possible.
Yeah, tanning really helps. Like I often say this from just a coaching perspective. Like I ask sometimes, well, some of my guys do it anyway, but some of my pale crew, which includes sort of me to top up the tan a little bit if they can for check-ins or for posing, because when you're super white, pale skinned, it's like the light almost reflects off the skin and you lose all definition. And even when you have the definition there, especially through photos and video, you can look very flat and quite just washed out. And it's not because you are, it's just because you're so pale.
Yeah, you mean, oh, I thought I look better than this.
Yeah, I often say that to some of my clients who I see in person who are super pale, and then when they send me their check-ins, I'm like, it's just because you just can't. Yeah, with a tan you add depth to the physique, and that's essentially why we use it on stage as well eventually.
Yeah, it ties in well to our topic today. Actually, I was just thinking that when you do get your, especially when you compete for the first time, any first timers listening have this to come, it's so epic, isn't it? Like you get your tan and then you go for a wee or whatever and you catch yourself in the mirror and you think, holy shit, I look really good.
Yeah, and it's super dark. It's, it's unlike any tan you're ever going to get. It's, 5-6 shades darker than your kind of average tan, I'd say. And yeah, it's amazing how, because the actual show tans themselves have got pigment, sort of different ingredients in them that help reflect the light and deflect the light as well. So that when you put it on stage under the lights, it just highlights all the right areas and helps obviously you pop and look the best you can be. So it's good.
Yeah, I mean, in person, it's so funny, isn't it, when people see you, like when you go for your post-show meal or whatever, and you sit in the restaurant and you're ordering, and you're with all your family and friends that, of course, are normal colour, and then you're sitting there like sort of Oompa Loompa / brown, and it's so funny because people can't quite understand what's happening, and of course you're going to be on the leaner side as well, so it's like, who is this person?
Yeah, you will get looks and you will get the eyes in the post-show meal for sure, when you just like have that little body shower or whatever and put some nice clothes on and go out. And if you are like strapless, like, or whatever, you will get all of those stares, and you hope that they put 2 and 2 together, that you are doing something that warrants the crazy color and that you're not just some crazy like obsessed tanner or something.
It's always helpful if my mum's there for my post-show meal. She's like, before the waiter or the waitress even gets a chance to ask for the order, she's like, my daughter, she's just competed, she's a bodybuilder, she's been doing this for quite a long time, and I'm like, oh god. And it's so cute, but I'm like, oh no. And when I have one and you take your whatever it's going to be, trophy or whatever, to the meal with you, she's like, put it on the table.
I know, it's crazy. Like everybody will tell anyone around you at that point like what you're doing and why you're doing it. So no, tan is good. Tan is good for all things.
It's a vibe. So today we're going to be talking about achieving true stage lean condition, and I think it's a really relevant topic, obviously because it is show season, so that's ideal placing, but it's very relevant for a lot of people because I did a post about this on my Instagram the other day. Achieving condition for a lot of people could be a slight outline of the abdominals, you're feeling better in clothes, and to someone looking at you in the gym, they might say, oh, you look really good, but that could be for us as competitors 8-10 weeks out. It could be quite a long period of time till you get there, and then as you get closer, it's those people that do start to potentially make comments, become more worried about you, and there's lots of things we could delve into today that you do come across when you're trying to achieve that condition.
Yeah, 100%. I think as well that until you've really actually done it, you don't quite realize how much physiologically and psychologically it will test you. And I think it's something very difficult for first timers, particularly, to understand, or certainly to find the resilience. And I don't mean this in a negative way, because you have to teach yourself that kind of resilience to pull yourself through those lower levels. But I think it's very difficult the very first time, and I certainly never got to where I get now in my first year. No way. I realized at that point what was necessary to get into the levels I do now. And over the years, we've got so much more information now out there. We've got more avenues in which we can actually get that information. And the coaching has developed and evolved as well, to such an extent that we can actually provide these protocols for first timers.
Yeah.
And see whether they're able to really kind of take it to that extra edge and make such a statement. Because I know that a lot of first timers coming through now, you know, they're like so crisp, and it's pretty admirable considering it's maybe the first time they've ever done that, and that does require some digging.
Yeah, it's definitely a whole nother realm. You know, there's getting leaner for holiday or something to feel a bit more comfortable, and then taking it to that extreme of getting staging's a completely different ballpark. And I'm the opposite to you, actually. So the first couple of preps, I got too lean on reflection. I was literally like, some people would say skin to the bone. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but
Yeah.
you know, I was so lean and like verging on bones and things showing, which now, especially with bikini, that's not what they want. And it really, it's always been, they should look at you as, you know, a well-being type look. They should look at you as a picture of health. You know, you want to have some body fat on you, but low enough so that you're still stage conditioned. And actually, I think bikini category is quite hard in that respect, because you know, different federations as well is completely different, which again is another complexity. But it's quite hard to understand what you need to achieve for bikini at times.
Yeah, well, I think the very first thing initially that, you know, if you're doing this yourself, or if you've got a coach, the first thing we're looking at is how much muscle is there on the frame to begin with. Because what you've just mentioned there about getting, you know, skin, or that type of skin and bone, I use the word emaciated, where you are extremely lean but you have absolutely zero muscle tissue on the frame, so you are looking like bony, that more skinny, stringy look, which is not a healthy, nice look, and it's a sign of over dieted. You know, it's taking that to the extreme. And obviously the job of coach, or the job of yourself, is to look at yourself and go, okay, how much muscle have I got on my frame? And sometimes in your first season, you might not get to those levels of crisp because you're risking losing the tissue in the first place. And then once you've gone to that realm, you're back to square one, trying to rebuild absolutely everything. So some people can't get ripped in their first season because they just don't have enough muscle tissue on the frame. You have to have muscle to show striation, to show condition. If you don't have muscle, then you end up losing a ton of body fat, but you don't really have that conditioned look. You just look very, very, very slim. You know what I mean? So there's different levels to this. And a typical sort of thing, and we'll go into this, that we see is a lot of people get conditioned very, very well in their top half, but might not pull through as much on the bottom half. And that's not per se, I mean, there's obviously more fat to come off, but it may be just down to the level of musculature on the lower body that is an issue with conditioning on the lower half as well.
Yeah, and to relate to that feedback that you gain, saying that, you know, potentially your upper body is there, but your lower body isn't, is that you potentially need to work on gaining more muscle in your upper body so that your ratios are better. You know, I think sometimes feedback from shows and when you compete can be taken in a different, you know, a number of different ways. And I personally like to see it as constructive, even if it is maybe on the negative side. But this is a massive warning to anyone wanting to compete, or anyone that competes. If you want to last in this sport, then you need to be able to take feedback. And like we said before, if you're competing, it's a competition.
Yeah.
You've got to be willing to, you know, take feedback and improve. Yes, you know, we've both come across sometimes, you know, judging that isn't potentially where we would see it, you know, different federations of all different things. But again, it is the sport, and it's also very, very subjective.
It is very subjective. And the thing is I think there's this obsession to chase condition, you know, be conditioned, be the hardest, be the leanest, be the absolute ripped, shredded thing on stage. It's not always the case. And actually, I'd go to the other side. I'd say it's particularly now when we have so much more information, and I've been on judging panels, we're looking for shape, and you might be the most ripped to the bone person on stage, but you've dieted so hard that your muscle and your frame and your shape is now at a detriment. And so the person to your left or right, they might not be as ripped as you, but they have much fuller tissue, and it's bodybuilding. Yeah. So it's not who's the most ripped on stage show. It's bodybuilding. And so it's, you know, the person who's maybe slightly less conditioned, but fuller muscled, fitting that X frame incredibly, sweeping quads, big beastie back, delts that you literally can see in every single angle, may just pitch that purely on the fact that we've got that shape and volume of the tissue, because judges know condition can continue to come, but muscle can't. You can't just fabricate muscle onto your tissue for a finals, for example, whereas you can get tighter and leaner for a finals.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, when you do judge, when you do look up at the stage, you can see when someone's over dieted, you can see when someone's overtrained. And also the knock-on effect of that is a lot of people don't actually enjoy their experience on stage because they are fucked.
Yeah, 100%.
And so actually it's detrimental to how you look on stage, how you feel on stage, and your whole experience. And consequently, how many dropouts do we hear of doing their first competition and not doing it again because they feel like shit?
Yeah, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. And, you know, like, there is an element of this is going to be hard work, and there is going to be a bit of feeling shit. And especially if you've never ever done anything like this before, I'm going to tell you now, you're going to feel the shittest you've ever felt because you've never, ever, ever done this before. Yeah. So the first level shit is shit. Then you come around to doing this again, you're like, I've built some lessons, like I've built some tools from that. Yeah. So it's not quite as shit. And then it goes like that. But it's like anything you do, taking your physique, transforming your physique to the next level comes with hard work. And I suppose the taking it to the complete next level is another layer of that, which we're digging into today. And obviously the things that can come along with that as well.
Yeah. And relating to what you just said there in regards to sort of the levels, you know, a big bit of advice that I give clients of mine, anyone that speaks to me about bodybuilding, and particularly, you know, people that haven't done anything like this before, is book yourself something like a photo shoot and achieve that level of leanness that requires dedication, it requires commitment, it requires the lifestyle changes that essentially would lead you to the stage, but you would need to continue that for 6 to 8 weeks depending on the person, you know, maybe less, maybe more. But it gives you an idea as to how you're going to feel, what it requires from your lifestyle, what you need to put in. And also, if you do a photo shoot prep, you can see where you need to improve by learning the different poses and the ways you're going to carry yourself if you want to compete. You can go into a growth phase to facilitate that, and then you can prep and do a show, and you know, using that really constructively. But again, it's a time thing, isn't it? A lot of people want to compete straight away, whereas this process could take 2 to 3 years if you do it properly.
Yeah, and there's the psychological and physiological responses as well, and that's something like coaches have to kind of not walk the tightrope on, but you've got, you know, you never know how a client is going to respond to the difficult points in this, and until they get there. And then when we're there, I mean, you can kind of spot certain things and you can navigate and you can learn and everything else, but when you are faced with the bits of hunger, the fatigue levels, the potential knock-ons to sleep, the fact that your tiredness then impacts your cognitive functioning, and then your work becomes stressful, everything starts, like a small thing that's kind of low level stress becomes amplified times 10. These things you can see, and I can tell you that that's what you're going to experience. But until you get to that and you actually experience it, you don't quite know how you're going to respond. And then at that point, it's about managing it and understanding, okay, here's physiologically what's going on. There's reasons for that. It's not going to last forever. And trust me, when you come off the end of the prep, it will go bounce back very, very quickly. But whilst we're here in this kind of the hard chunk of this, what are we going to do to make peace with the fact that this is hard? How are we going to manage our struggles? What can we put into our routine? Being very selfish with your time, telling people no, not going anywhere too far to save on energy expenditure, you know, all that kind of stuff. These are all things that we need to start to think about at that point to help said client, you know, or whoever it is, deal with it. And then you might have the opposite side where somebody gets to that and they're like, yeah, cool, no problem, come at me, let's have some more. So you've got two completely different sorts of people here, and neither one is right or wrong. They're both right and wrong. You know, it's not right and wrong, but it's like they've both got reasons and they're relevant reasons. So
yeah, I definitely feel like my time over bodybuilding, I've gone sort of full circle with those analogies. You know, I actually at the start, I loved the neuroticism of being a bodybuilder. Like if Stephen had said to me less food, I'd say, should I go a little bit lower than that? Or if he said more cardio, I'd say, should I do that and a little bit more? And I'd want more and more and more. And it was almost like when it was hard, it was like a challenge to me to go, well, you know, can you do this or not?
yeah,
well, yeah, you can. Let's push on. Let's push on. This does fall back to understanding what your why is and making that strong enough for you to compete. A lot of people fall into bodybuilding now because it's very, very popular with a mixture of ideas as to what they're going to get from the sport. And I remember you saying that you and Andrew had done a study as to how long people last in bodybuilding. It sticks with me because I think, wow, 2-3 years.
That's it. Yep.
And you and I have been doing this, you know, 8-10 years.
10.
Yeah, and it's like I couldn't ever imagine not doing it, but I think it's because it's down to understanding what my why is. And although that has evolved and that has changed over the years, I've never, you know, in a prep, I've never ever gone off plan. I've never ever deviated. I've never ever, you know, questioned why I'm doing it. I've always wanted more and wanted more and wanted more. But you know, it is hard when you get those points of, you know, extreme hunger, your energy levels are low. I was telling you before, I've hit that point in prep where it's like even the posing practice and things like this are much more energy demanding. Your you know, attention span is different. You need to, you know, keep busy but not too busy so that you end up adding to fatigue. So there's lots of big things that contribute to being able to withstand the diet and actually get to the true stage lean condition that we're talking about today.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a big part of this, like, okay, the body's doing what it needs to do, right? The body's got its plan, you've got your cardio, you've got your training, you've got the ins and outs of it. But the thing that people often don't talk about enough about really getting kind of as dialed in as the body is the mind, you know, it is your mindset. The mind is the most incredible tool when it comes to facing challenge, but it can also be the weakest link if you don't harness it like properly. You've got to almost like find this like battle mode in your head, and you're going into the gym to battle that workout that you don't want to do. And you're ticking the boxes of your cardio and everything else, even though it's become monotonous and boring as fuck, and you don't want to do it anymore because now the training's not enjoyable, which is the reason why you started. But at the end of a prep, it's becoming just boring and mundane and tick box, you know, and it's finding a way of going, nah, come at me. Because if you're boring and I'm calling you monotonous, then I'm going to show you that I can actually make you something that's worthwhile doing. Do you know what I mean? And we have to basically control all of the things that are causing us pain in this point, you know, like the constant pain in the body because you're never recovering really very much. Your joints are sore, you're tired, so you're crabby all the time. So you're like having to basically control this whirlwind of pain and dial it into your total superpower. I know I've spoken about this before, but focusing it so hard that it becomes like this mantra to yourself of like control and determination, and I'm a motherfucking badass and I can do this, and I'm totally and utterly 100% not going to let anything push me off, because this is a challenge, again, as I'm going to always say, to myself, to show me how strong I can be. How strong can Steff be? How strong can Sarah be? Because regardless of what happens on the stage, the tools you're building right now are so freaking insane. Like, they're so good, especially when you're literally crying over a leg press because your hormones are so ridiculously far out and you've no idea why you're crying, but you feel every central nervous system, like fiber in you, just bubbling with suppression.
It is true. You do get those prep cries though, don't you? You get those things where, you know, and I actually find it quite cathartic, because I'll be walking along and then suddenly I'm crying and I think, I don't actually know why I'm crying, but I like to try and almost embrace it and let it out and see it for what it is. You know, maybe it's an emotion that needs to come out, because let's face it, we're starving the body to unnatural levels of leanness that you wouldn't put on someone, you wouldn't advise that, but it is what is required from the sport. So it's almost like it's hard, isn't it? Because you gain all of these things from the sport, but at the tail end of a prep, it isn't your healthiest option, is it? You know,
it's just not. You know, you're doing something against the body's natural process. And when we're talking about going to that next little bit of level here, you have to get deep inside and go, right. Because I think the thing is in this day and age, right? Not that I'm making myself sound like a dinosaur here, but I do feel like a dinosaur. And I know some of my listeners will laugh at me because they know I feel very old at the moment. But in this world we live in right now, right? Everything is like, I feel like we don't talk a lot about resilience and hard work. And sometimes you're going to be told no to, or sometimes you're going to find that a situation you're in isn't going to go your way. Because now I feel like everyone has got an out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, there's a reason for everything. You're never wrong. People hardly take responsibility. I'm generalizing here, but you know what I mean? Like, there's loads of, I feel like this kind of, this inner strength that we have to be able to kind of just realize how powerful we are as individuals can sometimes get lost in all of the,
it's almost external input, isn't it?
It's hard. Like, I'm not wanting to sort of say like we're all weak and do anything or anything like that. That's not what I'm meaning. I'm just meaning that when you've chosen a goal as hardcore as this, you've got to accept this is hard. And you're going to wake up and it's going to be hard. You're going to go to bed and it's going to be hard. And you're going to do your day and it's going to be hard. And you've just got to suck it up, because it's really, really hard. And this is why not everyone can do this goal.
Yeah. Like you just said there, though, you've chosen a sport. It's a choice. And yes, you know, sometimes people can take this in the wrong way, but as we always do on the pod, it's truthful insights to what it takes to be a bodybuilder and, you know, to also be successful. And success, that can mean many, many things. It doesn't mean necessarily lifting a trophy, but what you mentioned there of those daily wins, you need to become almost your own hero. I know it's a little bit cliche, but your coach isn't going to be there every single day saying, well done, you've done your steps, you've done your food prep, you've done your posing practice, you've done, you know, the list is endless what you put into a day on a prep, on an off season, whatever it may be, depending on how you construct things. You know, off season is just as much of a grab, because when you do this sport as a lifestyle, every single day, every moment, you're thinking, how can I be better as a bodybuilder? It's just ingrained into you. And you know, that's a pressure in itself, and it is hard sometimes because you're not thinking normally like your friends, your family and people around you may be thinking, but you got to learn to love that. You got to learn to love yourself and your choice and let that serve you.
100%. That, I mean, I think that's an absolutely brilliant way of saying it, because it's making peace with the choice, not being swayed by other people's opinions, what other people think, what other people are doing, what they think you should do, not second guessing yourself. Choosing this is a hugely rewarding journey for yourself, and there's going to be pain along the way, but it's embracing it, and it's coming out the other end with huge tools of resilience, strength, inner power, feeling, strong, and all of those things are the wins. We spoke about this in the last one: process, not outcome. Everything you're doing here is bettering you as a person, that you'll have tools that will transfer to the rest of your life. You're not going to be in this horrible bit of the diet for much longer. Food is not going away anywhere. We have thousands of shops around us. We're in the most grateful times of our lives. We've got everything at our disposal always. Stuff is never going away. So it's finding just that sort of, I can do this attitude, and digging deep when you need to, and having your cry if you need to, leaning on people when you need to, but also giving yourself a really good talking to when you need to as well. It's like all of those things combined.
Yeah. And you talking about food there, something I always do all of the time is I share things on my story and do little jokey things, you get food porn and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It just made me think, I do get messages, people saying, oh, I'm living vicariously through your food porn. Oh, I'd love to eat that. Oh, are you missing this food, or aren't you missing that food?
Yeah.
And actually, I know what it takes to get to stage lean. And like you just said there, really, really good bit of advice there. Food isn't going away. It's always going to be there. And, being able to look at different foods, share different foods, it doesn't mean that you're not committing to your, prep and what you're doing. You can still enjoy things for other people. You can still look at stuff. If, however, it causes you distress to look at people eating for certain things, look on Instagram, whatever it may be, then don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And it's taken me years to get to this point, really. I used to, when I was in a prep, I used to stop searching any foods. I wouldn't look at any stuff on Instagram, on the internet. I wouldn't look at menus and stuff like this for after the show, because it actually became quite detrimental. Now I can look and actually think, be really nice to go for a meal with my family. But you do get you get these very bad food focuses in this sport, and it then takes away from what you're trying to do. We've mentioned a while ago on the pods, you compete and you're on stage thinking, I can't wait to eat a meal when I get off stage, not I'm here to win, I'm here to compete. It's a really sad story when you have that. I've had it in my my own bodybuilding journey. It's not a very nice feeling, and this is where a coach, or speaking to like-minded people, listening to things like podcasts, you can get a bit of insight there. But it does become that more and more, the more you withdraw food and the more you get into the prep to get to that stage condition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think you've hit so many valid points there. The whole, if all you're focused on is just one thing and you don't get the result, you're going to crash, like major crash. And I understand what that feels like. And I think the first time you ever do competitions, like, of course everyone wants to win. There is a sense of like, excitement and elation. And there's also like, regardless, like whether you come second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth or not at all, there's always like a sense of like, I've done it. But I've done this, but I've not maybe got the result. And it's not like cry, it's not like tears of real upset that I haven't won. It's like tears of just I can't describe it. It's like weird. I remember kind of taking a few sort of second, third, and in the British finals placing in my very first year after having a very good start to the season. And then when you get to British, it's a different story. And I remember coming off stage there, and I got in the top 5 for that very first British, and I was absolutely buzzing. But I was also like, I had this like total wave of like sadness as well, because I was like, like I haven't done as well as my other shows, or maybe I should have done better, or you have all these things, and that's totally natural, because again, it's the nature of competition. And then you come away and you actually go, no, do you know what? I had a blast. And you reflect on all the other things that were part of the day and part of the whole experience. And you realize actually, like, I'm so I'm so proud of myself for getting up there regardless and doing something I never thought I'd be able to do, and building my confidence and meeting so many people, and all of the hard work becomes completely worth it. And if it doesn't feel that way, then maybe you've found you've done the event and you've enjoyed it, but maybe it's just something you've gone, I'm okay with that, I've done it and now I don't need to do it again. So there's that as well, and that's cool too. So there's lots there.
Yeah, I'm so into telling people, you want to enjoy your stage experience. You've put so much work into this, and I really had that sort of, I guess, almost epiphany when I judged for the first time.
Mm.
I looked up at the stage and I thought, this is people's life partially in my hands. Obviously there's a judging panel, and it took me back to those competitions where I haven't been looked at. I haven't felt that I've even been judged and
like judged. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and all of those moments that flooded through of bad experience I've had in the sport, because unfortunately there has been shows that I've done and I really haven't enjoyed it, like you've said before. And it also gave me that reality check to go, I put myself through that, and now I'm judging people that are also going through that. And what an achievement that is, to even be able to get to that point. Like you mentioned earlier, the dropout rate for a prep, I didn't realize is extremely high. I never knew. I guess because I guess you're probably going to be the same, Steph. If I say I'm doing a prep, I'm doing a prep.
And I think I take that for granted, and certainly I know I've recognized that in some of my clients, that the focus and determination it's not everyone's got it.
No.
It's a very difficult thing to quantify and build and harness, and I take it for granted sometimes, like, right, I'm in a prep, nothing's going to fall off whatsoever. That's just my mindset, and where that comes from is probably a lot of other back stuff we could go into, because all of your attributes, behaviors, the way you think about things, the whys, the whats, all come from somewhere. And it's not just when you started bodybuilding.
No, it's back to when you were a child.
When you're a kid, it's when you're, I was a competitive dancer from the age of like 4. So, it's been ingrained in me for a very long time, this competition malarkey, this kind of stuff. But I think I totally take that for granted. And you're not, going back to that sort of, it's not weakness, it's finding the way of helping someone see their potential, and that they've got so much more than they realize by harnessing this up here, and really thinking, okay, when the body's tired and the body's pushing against, when the body's fighting, what can we do with our head, and how do we start to kind of build on that to help you stay within that prep and really follow it through. Because you're right, a lot of people do fall off because it is so hard, and it is such an extreme sort of process, especially with a lot of pressures around you as well, like we have today.
Yeah. I mean, we do speak about this in pods, and it's probably useful to highlight some of the things that people could, bring into their prep when they're in particular getting to this closer point to the stage. So maybe the last 6 to 8 weeks is, I certainly feel about maybe 4 to 6 weeks out, I have to deploy certain things to save myself to be able to compete at my best. And some of these things that we both do, they are uncomfortable to sometimes put into place, being upfront with the people that are close to you, the people that you've got relationships with that are going to be affected. Being able to be open and honest with that is probably a good one to start with, because I'd say that's probably the trickiest.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, it's a funny one, because like I think it's a really good thing to talk to people around you, colleagues at work, bosses, family, friends, anyone who you think is going to be a good support and understand what you're going through. I've also seen it go the other side, where people have opened up and sort of told people around about it, and they've really kind of we've talked about this a lot, where you find out who your friends are. You find that you might, somebody who you think will support you might actually not, and that can be quite a challenge in itself, to find your circle, because you will through this, you really will. So that's definitely something, protecting yourself from all the questioning, because if you tell people, there won't be as much of the questioning, hopefully. And if you feel that, I had a client the other day say to me that when she spoke to people, it was like a weight had lifted off her shoulders. She's been just like keeping it all in, not really telling anyone. They're all second guessing what she's doing, and she's been trying to kind of just keep on low key, but actually it's been causing more problems for her subconsciously. And when we decided, right, let's go and find a prep buddy, talk to people, she's like, oh, it just feels so good to just now not have anyone going like, what's she doing? And instead going, that's what she's doing.
Yeah.
It's like such a huge weight off her shoulder.
Yeah, and people on the outside of it, especially my first probably 3 preps, thought I had a food disorder. And essentially, I don't say this, lightly in a sense, but bodybuilding is a food disorder labeled as a sport. If you look at it from, certain points of view, it could be easily you're overtraining to a certain degree because you're not having the food going in, you're in a severe deficit, to reach these levels of lean we're talking about. It is detrimental if you were to continue that for long periods of time. So the relationship with food is compromised, and then off the back of that, that's why I say like a food disorder covered up as a sport, because if you don't manage it properly and you're not aware of that, it can turn into that very quickly, especially if you don't have the experience with your show that you're hoping for. And how the sport can turn from something very, very good in your own mind to something extremely negative if you don't get that result. Bodybuilding being a sport that does breed that disordered type eating, or associated behaviors that you could class as contributing to something like a food disorder. And that's not to put negative light on the sport, but on the face of it, that's what it is. You are pushing to extremes that your body is not happy with, your mind is probably not happy with. But it's back to this being a choice. If you want to achieve that condition, you got to work for it.
Yeah. And I think the thing is as well is it can go one of 2 ways. Like one of my clients the other day was, making her food or whatever. And of course the consensus is, oh, you must eat nothing. You must literally eat nothing to get in shape. And the opposite is actually quite true sometimes. Yep. You're eating plenty of healthy food, fibrous food, loads of carbs, loads of good proteins, meats, depending, of course, on what diet you're on. But that's usually somewhere within the realms of a good, healthy woman's natural diet. 12 to 1,500 calories is not under subpar and for some people, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Or more. I've got a lot of athletes right now sitting on more than that. It's just this kind of remembering that it's over a period of time is where this kind of idea of the controlled starvation comes from, because you're manipulating things over a long period of time. And yeah, I'm kind of hesitant on the disordered eating term, or disordered. I think what we're saying is it could be looked at from the outside in from people who know nothing about it. For sure, as a eating pattern. But if it's done in a controlled way, being very mindful of, we're trying to get the body to a low place, and very carefully then reversing out of that. But yeah, there's lots of things. It's one of those things that we're talking about bodybuilding because we love it and we do it, but there's also the consequences that come with the extremities of it. And that when you go into doing something like this, you've got to be prepared for the hard times, and the hard how do I put it? I don't know how to put it. Like just the days that you're going to really question why you're doing this.
Yeah, and that's also, those days when you're questioning why you're doing it, and when your body is heavily fatigued, your mind's not potentially on the ball like it would be. Yeah. The list goes on. It's those days that actually I find could easily feed into this becoming the disordered way of thinking. Again, not a negative, but when things aren't going your way or you're extremely tired, you start potentially zoning in on being even more neurotic with your food prep, with everything that contributes to getting to stage lean. And that then becomes almost like behaviors that you don't want, because they become more negative than you'd like them to be, because this is something that you're trying to do that is meant to be positive. But it is hard. It's hard, the journey of bodybuilding. It's not going to be easy, but there's so much that comes from it.
Yeah, it is. And it's really, you've got to be really careful not to go down that pattern of like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? It's so shit. Because the thing is like, you've decided to, and remember how bouncy you were in the first phase of prep. You want to do this. It's something you want to do. Trust me, it's all worth it. So the low mood the self-doubt, the low self-worth, the sometimes verging on periods of depression, feeling extremely low in yourself is so normal. I mean, I am not going to sit here and say that I've found the depths of prep easy. I haven't in any way. There's been, even for me, like points where in my sort of like, you know, even my 2019 prep, where I was going through some very, very big life events. I went through a divorce. I went through a complete and utter career shift with, well, I lost a lot, which I'm sure you can go and hear on different podcasts on here. But it was an extraordinarily humongous challenge. My whole life changed. I moved countries. I lost my partner. I had the most hugely overwhelming amount of motion and stuff going on in my world. And the prep really grounded me. And Shauna, and I talk about this kind of mirror thing all the time. You're because you're staying in such a kind of routinal process, institutionalized almost. It's like looking at yourself in the mirror and going, okay, what part of my life is going good and what part of my life is not going so good, and how do I now piece that all together the way I want it to be. And these kind of big routine really helped me get my life back together, if I'm honest, in that particular prep. But was it easy? Absolutely not. Was there days where I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I focusing on this ridiculous goal when my life is doing this and my partner's doing that and my job is doing this? And what am I doing this for? I'm such a selfish individual. Why should I be focusing on these things? These are all things that genuinely went through my head. And it was painful for such a big part of it. But I got up every day, I went and did my cardio, got to that gym, and I took everything out on those weights. I loved, not that I'm sadistic, but I loved the pain I was in, because it was helping me grow as a human being and a partner and a person and everything else that I was going through at the time. And it really did, if I'm honest, completely and utterly pull me out of a very difficult place, that particular prep. So this is where you can mold the prep to be what you want it to be. It's good. It can be really, really difficult and hell and you're in the pits of rubbish, or it can be, this is really hard, but all the things I'm learning I'm going to put towards becoming a better version of myself.
I actually read a quote earlier that really rings true, and it's learning to love yourself so that other people can love you. And again, it's the same thing with bodybuilding. You know, if I was to say to everyone that said to me, oh you compete, and I went, oh shit, I feel like crap, you know, I'm training, I'm doing this food prep, don't like eating that food, calories are really low, what is that person gonna think of bodybuilding? Also, what am I telling myself? That my chosen sport, my chosen journey is shit. So how is that ever going to serve me and serve my purpose to continue doing this? Whereas if, you know, if people voice their concerns or whatever it is when you're in a prep, you know, we've said before when we were speaking with Rob about trying to educate them and simplify things, but also, you know, you can say to them off the back of that, you know, this is something that I choose to do because I get a hell of a lot out of the sport. Yes, it is hard, but to get to that stage condition, that's what's required. You know, it's really nice for you to voice your concerns, but I am happy with what I'm doing. I've got a coach that looks after me, which of course we always recommend that people get a coach that's going to actually care about them. And, you know, you can say I'm doing this in the most controlled way possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will get those people at the end of it being like, you know, God, taking it too far, sort of thing. And you're always going to have those people. The people who get it are gonna support that. You know, the people that just I say, what do I normally call them? Confused admirers. That's the sort of people I call them. Confused admirers. They're confused by what you're doing. They're worried about perhaps what you're doing, but they're also like curious and they admire your determination, focus, you know, that kind of thing. So it is like at that point at the end of a prep, you really got to get tunnel vision and just focus solely on the game plan. You're plugged in, so you want to finish the game, right? You've got a few more levels left to get through, and then you get that like score at the end. It's just like, it's a game, it's a proper big game, and you're in the midst of it, and it's got good levels, easy levels, and then it's got the bad horrible levels with the big, you know, crazy thing that you have to
smash down to get through. You know, if you think about it like that, it's exactly like that.
I mean, it's almost like when people do start to comment more frequently on my change in body composition when I am close to the show, I'm like, well, I must be doing it right, you know, quite simply, because if you look very lean and almost unhealthily lean before you fill up when you go on stage, and you know, you deploy those different things that go towards a peak week and to get to your best on stage, you know, there is those, I don't know, 3-4 weeks before where you're flat and you don't. Pumps are minimal. And also, you know, bear that in mind, people that are listening, you know, when you're getting close to a show, the gym might not feel the same, you know, you're not going to get the same pumps that
not at all.
Food,
you'll hardly get a pump at all if
you're training.
You'll be so like, weak, picking up the twos over your head in shoulder press, like you just, I remember completely losing all snap in shoulders in my last prep, like to the point where I was actually concerned even myself. I was just so ready to sort of, you know, step up there, and that was sort of the dregs. But you are going to feel like that. Pumps are going to go.
Yeah, and that's something that is also going to contribute to you being able to get to those conditions, being real with yourself and understanding that, you know, these certain things are connected to going to extremely low body fat levels, and that is part of the process to bring your best condition to stage and to be competitive. You know, and being able to have that honest head and go, okay, so I'm not feeling that great. Why is it? Okay, it's because of this. What can I do to potentially help that, you know, aid recovery? Like you said, don't do things like travel really far. Try to look at your calendar close to the show and keep it clear, you know, practice things like self-care. All of those things are going to contribute to you being able to essentially last that period of time and still come in at your best, rather than putting stress on yourself in other areas, as well as trying to take so much, you know, from your body and your mind. It requires a lot, you know, and for experienced people listening like ourselves, we take it for granted sometimes how we can just switch into a prep and then it's done. Till we get to stage, it's tunnel vision, but it's not always the case, is it?
No, it's not at all. And I think we've just covered so much on this, and it's in a way, this entire podcast is a bit like the ebbs and flows of prep. It's the grit, it's the emotion, it's the fatigue, it's the elation, it's the fun, it's the passion, it's also the questioning and the doubt. And you know, that is in essence like a prep for not just a first timer, for an intermediate, you know, athlete, and for a pro level athlete. I don't think anything of an aesthetic nature that's like this, where it's being judged, comes with, I'm going to compete, happy, now the job's done. I don't think I've ever seen a single person, not even my like friends at like top athlete level in this game, you know, I don't hear a single one of them, nor any of my first timers or anyone that I just know sort of around my level, you know, where we're kind of in the middle, just say that it's been smooth plain sailing. It's always got its trials and tribulations, ups and downs, and I think this podcast really does kind of cover all of that. But deep down, like, you got to know your why, and you got to want to complete it, and you got to want to kind of drive through, and don't let anything stop you. And sometimes you're going to have to dig that little bit harder just to get through it.
Yeah, and like you say, that feeling doesn't last forever, you know. It
doesn't at all.
Yeah, and it's looking at why you want to achieve this goal, what you need to do to get there, being real with yourself, and also to get to that stage condition, not pissing around, you know. You know, in all due respect, if you half-ass this, it's going to be potentially a half-assed physique, performance, all of those things, because, you know, how many people do we know that don't do the posing practice, that miss a meal, that miss a beat? It's not going to contribute to you being able to potentially get the best from the sport. So big bits of advice in today's session, but also just rounding it up there as to, you know, trying to understand a bit more about what you're doing, why you want to do it, and essentially making sure that it's worth it.
Yeah, making sure it's worth it. And also just a point there, like on the levels, wherever you are listening right now, think about a level 1 to level 10 game. You're going through these different levels to get to the end, to complete the race or to complete the goal or whatever it is. where are you on that level? Now, if you're at the latter end, you know, you feel like you're level 7, level 8, level 9, and it's hard, then it's right. You're in the right place. Yep, you're in the right level, because it's hard as fuck and it's really, really challenging. But you know what? The end is in sight, and you can see it, and you can feel it, and you can tangibly almost like reach out and touch it. So dig hard and get there. Trust me, it will be worth it. Now, if you're in like the middle levels and you're sort of, you can't quite see the end yet, but the beginning's far enough away to feel the pinch, then you need to now at this point go, right, what's my why again? Okay, yeah, that's what it is. Am I willing to keep going at this for a little bit longer? Is that a yes or is it no? Can I sacrifice that holiday and that packet of crisps over there? Yes. Is it a yes? Is it a no? And if it's a yes, then keep going up to those levels. If it's a no, turn back now.
Take your crisps and go on holiday.
Go pack your bag and just, do you know what? Just go, screw it. Let's try next year. But at the end of the day, like, this is fun. It's all about fun. And yes, it's a hard fun, but it's worth it if you want to go and enjoy that sort of the whole game. It's worth it.
It's so fulfilling, like you said earlier, the lessons you learn from bodybuilding. Honestly, I can't even put into words. For a start, it's given me purpose, you know.
Yeah, massively.
Because in life, we're all often lost on our way at times. And for me and you, like you said about, you know, getting divorced, big life changes. Throughout my whole time of doing bodybuilding, I've always had something to fall back on as a purpose to achieve. To see this as a really positive thing. And you'll never catch me bad mouthing bodybuilding, because it's given me so much. And even when we talk about, you know, the behaviors it can bring about, what you're doing to your hormones, what you're doing to your body, I still see that as there's still positives to all of those. But we got to be real here. It's not, you know, it's not a sport that you can just pop in and out of if you want to compete and you want to be
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, on that note as well, like, you can go and see or go and listen to some of our other podcasts we've done, and there's quite a few on the YouTube that we did prior to starting the Beyond condition before transferring over to the podcast. There's quite a lot up there on this topic: psychological and physiological effects of contest prep. There's ones where we talked about the ups and downs of hormones and how it feels being a female in the industry, that kind of stuff. They're all still up there. Go and check them out. Because no doubt we'll repeat and come over some of these again in the next few podcasts. But if these are really helping people, which I know they are, like, we're getting great feedback. Because do you know what the thing I love most that we're hearing at the moment is that we're being real and honest about the experiences that we're having. And that's why we set out to do this, so that yes, we can talk about all the jargon and the ups and the downs of the chemicals and the hormones and the evidence base and the this and the that. But at the end of the day, we're not all scientists or coaches or evidence-based practitioners or PhDs in XYZ. We're real life people doing this goal. And sometimes we just need to really understand that other people are going through the same things that we are. That's really important that we get that out to you guys. So I hope that you're still all enjoying them, and please do give us, what's it called? Ideas.
Content, because I get exactly the same, you know, when people do message and say, oh, perhaps you could bring up this, or really enjoy the pods, you know, every person that reposts on their story or gives us this feedback, we really do take it to our hearts, because it's so special to us. And like you say, it's exactly the reason why we're doing it. So on that topic, make sure you're sharing the podcast episodes, and any feedback, please let us know, because we're always open to suggestions, or just hearing how you're enjoying the pod is something that makes my day when it comes in. So thank you
100%. I want to see all the game gif emojis on the stories, please.
Best one gets a prize.
Like little Sonic the Hedgehog running across the screen.
You get an extra little win for the day then, because we will share it as well.
100%.
So until the next time, Steff, as always, love the session today, and it'd be really good to plan our following episodes and lots of topics we can cover. So any ideas, please let us know.
100%. Loved it. You guys keep going, dig in.
Do it.
Ciao, ciao.
See you later.